European football has been gripped by talk of a World Cup boycott after FIFA's attempt to sell off a stake in the commercial rights business behind its biggest tournaments to outside investors provoked fury. UEFA and its 55 member federations have pushed back hard against the plan, refusing to accept it quietly. The dispute has raised a bigger question. Why has this issue triggered such a fierce response, one that even raises the prospect of nations skipping the tournament altogether? The history of sports neutrality. The idea of sports neutrality did not exist from the beginning. Many of the norms of modern sports developed from the sporting culture of the British upper class in the 19th century. At the time, there was a strong belief that amateurs who played sports without receiving payment were more respectable than professionals who played for money. In practice, though, only those from relatively privileged social classes could afford to play sport without being paid. Amateurism, in other words, was not a principle that guaranteed fairness so much as a reflection of upper-class life. It was from this same tradition that another idea took hold, that sport ought to remain insulated from politics and other outside interests. Was politics really kept outside the stadium? In reality, political neutrality in sports has not always been maintained in the same way. At the 1936 Berlin Olympics, Nazi Germany actively used the Games as a stage to promote and glorify its political system. In contrast, when South Africa discriminated against people based on race, including in opportunities to participate in sports, the international sports community excluded South Africa from the Olympics and other competitions. In this case, a sports boycott became a means of putting pressure on the country to change its discriminatory policies. These two examples show that political neutrality does not simply mean keeping politics away from sports. The more important questions are who decides what neutrality means and who is expected to follow that standard. Authority matters more than corporate money. Today, the World Cup already generates enormous revenue through corporate sponsorships and broadcasting rights. Therefore, the involvement of corporate money itself is not necessarily the problem. The key question is not, should companies be allowed to invest money in sports? But rather, who has the right to decide what happens to the value created collectively through sports? The World Cup's value was not created by FIFA alone. FIFA is less its owner than an organization entrusted by the wider football community to manage it on their behalf. That is why questions of political and economic neutrality in sport emerged when FIFA, acting as manager, attempted to sell off rights tied to that broader community's interests to private investors. There has never been a completely pure sport that was entirely independent of politics and money. The recent FIFA controversy shows once again that the value of sports is created within particular historical and social circumstances. When we think about the neutrality and independence of sports, we should not ask only how far sports should be kept away from politics and money. We should also ask who created that value and who has the right to decide its future.